seems like you kind of found the right people and kind of got the mentorship while like working your way up, which is tremendous.
The regrets that I have, and a lot of people, I want people to hear this, whoever's going to listen to this. The one thing I wish I would have done a lot better was leverage the relationships I had. I was always a little too passive. And it goes back to social media now, right? A lot of people are afraid to say, hey, I'm selling you something. And it's same thing as what I wish I would have done there was like, just be honest and just build that relationship and say, hey, you know, I'm trying to open up something. You want to be an investor? Or, hey, can you get me this? I was always afraid to ask. And if I can go back in time, that's what I would change.
You know, welcome to the Health is Wealth podcast. This podcast was just kind of created out of... It's meant to be. Let me just put it like that. So I'm super excited because we have Pasquale Romano here. Not only has this guy just been a great mentor and a great person in my life, but I originally came on your podcast and now you're coming on my podcast. Yep. So it's crazy the way the tides have turned and, we get to pay it forward, right? And exchange that mutual love and respect.
Yeah, we live in a very interesting time. You know, there's so much accessible information out there, and we all have a platform now. You don't have to go to journalist school anymore and be on, NBC. You can start your own podcast, create your own following, and just share knowledge and information. And I always felt if you touch just one person, that's an accomplishment for me.
I heard you say that recently on one of your stories. Yeah. And I was like, man, that's exactly how I started in the fitness, nutrition, coaching space because I doubted myself. I was like, who's going to buy a program for me or who's going to listen to me for fitness advice? I've been a fat, chunky kid my whole life, right? But I was like, you know what? Like after I went through the process, I was like, if I can just help one person change their life the way I was able to do for myself, like that's it. That's a win. And, since then I've helped close to 500. So it's wild, it sparked the domino effect.
Do you ever show your clients like your before, like what you used to look like and how you felt?
I have some before and afters in some like videos and some footage and on my actual like website. But I don't think some people realize that's me until they do. And they're like, no way.
Because I think that's valuable. I mean, that you've been through where they are. So it's like, it's no different than somebody who's in real estate or somebody who's going through a specific industry. You want to listen to somebody who's come from the bottom to the top. Their journey is important, even though your journey, even though everyone's is unique. I think that's just extremely valuable.
Yeah, I mean, the most important success story is your own. I remember early on when I started in this space, I had a coach at the time helping me to strategize in order to build this business. And he was like, yeah, man, you need some testimonials. You need some before and afters. And I was like, well, I haven't really helped anybody. Like, where do I get those? And he's like, well, use your own.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
your best one.
That's the best one.
And then he was like, help people for free until you have 5 of those, and then, and that's exactly what I did.
It's amazing. It really is. That picture, I'm telling you, I can't wait to show you some of these pictures. I didn't realize how many pictures we had together, by the way. Because I'm looking through it. Obviously, for people that don't know, I'm leaving Las Vegas August 31st. So I literally have 9 days left here.
I saw that.
So I'm like going through like this whole thing. I'm just like, man, like what a life it's been, what a ride it's been. So I'm reflecting.
You've lived the life of a rock star, man.
In the beginning, my first few years, I mean, obviously, it was during a different time. It was like kind of pre-social media. MySpace was the thing. But man. Crazy. Yeah. It was different, very different. And I sound like an old guy because you always hear the older people say, my time was, it really was for me. It's a different era now as far as the hospitality industry, but man.
I like to put that into perspective. Like there's a lot of students that I might hop on, or potential students that I hop on calls with and they're like, I'm getting old. And it's like, you're 40 years old. Like, yes and no, because let's put it into perspective. My grandfather's 88 years old. He's still ticking. He actually had open heart surgery during pandemic. He's still kicking. And it's like, 88, like we're 40, I'm about to be 40. I think you're close to it, right? So we have only lived half of our life, really, not even if we hit that 88 mark. And then to think that the first like 25 to 30 years of that 40, we were still just figuring shit out, you know, and throwing ourselves out there into the fire. So, you know, the best years are yet to come. And really for us as men, as long as you know, you take care of your health and, you know, you have your family and your money's right, the world is yours.
Yeah, I mean, 40 is the new 30. I think we're in a very, we have an advantage now versus when my parents were growing up. I mean, people thought smoking was okay back then. They didn't realize how bad Coca-Cola is, high fructose corn syrup. So like we're in a much different era where everything is all about our phones. So like we have to look good, feel good. So I think that's the plus to the social media world we live in is you want to take care of yourself most people. I think it's important.
You know,
are what you eat, man.
I'm curious. What was it that made you want to move from Vegas? And I know, you know, you left nightlife. You opened up the cafe. Oh, amazing cafe, by the way. I still see the cafe. I've stopped in there a couple of times since you sold it, but it's just not the same because I'm used to seeing you in there. And but anyway, you had the cafe, and then Florida, that's where you're headed?
Florida's where I'm heading. So I'll give you the Reader's Digest version. So I actually am writing about this right now in my newsletter. I do a weekly newsletter that I'm truly passionate about. So I was kind of reflecting. I moved to Las Vegas because I was a musician. So I was in a band.
I didn't know that.
Some people like to call it a boy band, but I thought of it more of as a man band. So I was a break dancer. A lot of people don't know this, which is hilarious. So we were going to stop in Vegas first, and then the original plan was LA, and we were working on some deals, believe it or not. We were almost on the verge of signing with Interscope Records at the time. But at the time, Justin Timberlake just left NSYNC, so the kind of boy band phase was fading away a little bit, so it was becoming a little bit harder. And then things have to align perfectly. Like I had 3 band members, and everybody was on different pages. I mean, the dedication, the time, the sacrifice, and the talent. Everything has to align. I mean, that's why only few make it. So things started to fall apart, and I was living in Las Vegas, and just like you, I moved here with $1,000 to my name.
Oh, wow.
No BS. $1,000, 1 suitcase, 1 plane ticket. Lived on a friend's apartment floor in Lake Mead, in what was not the most desirable area, but I had no idea. Came here, worked at Sprint as I was doing my music. Did a couple shows at the Ice House for all the old heads out there. The Ice House used to be an old venue. Right. We did a couple live performances there. Literally taking the bus everywhere, getting lost in some of the worst areas. Like, 'cause Vegas is on a grid.
Oh, yeah.
So I lived on Lake Mead, not realizing Lake Mead goes from one end to the other.
Oh, yeah.
So I got off on the Lake Mead side, which was close to Martin Luther King. And I'll never forget, I was going to an interview and dressed up. I get off, and like it was a really interesting scene. I'll never forget, a gentleman by the 7-Eleven, that's where the bus stop was, called me over in a van, which, you know, and I got to, like, you know, I'm a small guy, so I was like, I have to stand my ground. He's calling me over.
Yeah.
He's like, hey, come on over here. So I went over there. He goes, hey, you don't look like you belong around here. He's like, I got your back. He's like, I suggest you stay in the 7-Eleven until the next bus comes. So he was actually looking out for me. Wow. It was a weird area. Yeah. And that's when I realized, like, man, I got to figure this out. My brother, who used to live in Las Vegas, worked at C2K, which was a hot spot back in the late 90s at the Venetian. He ran the door there for 2 years, and then he left to go to New York. But because he worked at that club, a lot of those people went to other venues like Studio 54 and Rain. Okay. And he's like, dude, what are you doing working at Sprint selling cell phones? If you're going to live in Las Vegas, you got to work on the Strip.
Oh, yeah.
And that's how I got the interview, as a porter.
As a porter. I remember. I remember this story. You started as a porter.
Yeah, as a porter. And people that don't know what a porter is in essence is basically the garbage man of the venue. And I'll never forget my first night at work. I was so excited. The energy was there. Hulk Hogan came in. My first hour of working, we all had earpieces in. They called it on the radio. And the section I was working, they were like a bio and VIP. Remember the VIP section in Rain?
Right.
Yeah, right next to the DJ booth. Didn't know what that was. Didn't know I had to clean throw up. That was not in the job description. I didn't know I had to clean throw up, and there was throw up everywhere. So that was my first hour of work. And I was like, what did I sign up for? And that's basically how it started. And then from that night, I saw the guys in suits with the earpieces. I was like, what do those people do? And somebody told me it was a VIP host. I was like, I want to do that.
Yeah, and it's crazy because I actually know like where you went from there. So you know, to go from, you know, this story that you had to porter to director of VIP services to helping open a casino when you went over to Link with John Gray and them, and then director of Caesars. I mean, wow, you really worked your way up from the bottom, man.
I worked my way up, and I just, I always remained humble, and I always wanted more. And I do have some regrets on that journey, things I could have done better that led me to where I am now. But man, I mean, I just associated myself with the right people that I knew I could learn from, that had my back. And the way I did it, because at that time, a lot of people don't know this, and this was slightly before when you came, being a VIP host in the city was a prestigious honor. It was like a secret society. Everybody's a host now.
Yeah.
But back then, you could not get in. And they pushed for me to get in. It was a fight. But the way I did it was, anytime Bronson was anywhere in the city, I always showed up with like 10, 12 girls. I didn't have clientele. I didn't have spenders. So the next best thing, being 22 years old, was let me bring some ladies to the table. And that resonated with him.
I know that well from the promotion
you know that
side
world.
of things,
You know how
right?
valuable that is, right? Like, I was playing the game.
Mm-hmm.
As lame as it is, by the way. I actually hated doing it, but I knew that's what I needed to get their attention.
Right.
And it worked.
Yeah.
Yeah, it worked.
Yeah, surrounding yourself, by the way. It seems like, you know, at where I'm at in my life, like, I know how important mentors are. And you know, a lot of times people need to pay for that mentorship or pay for that guidance, right? That's why there's tons of coaching programs out there now, and it's $1 billion industry. I mean, it's huge. But it seems like you kind of found the right people and kind of got the mentorship while like working your way up, which is tremendous.
Which is tremendous. And then the regrets that I have, and a lot of people, I want people to hear this, whoever's going to listen to this. The one thing that I didn't do well, which J-Rock does fantastic. Shout out J-Rock, one of my good friends. Yeah. Tattooed together, baby. Nice. So J-Rock's a great guy, and me and him came up together. The one thing I wish I would have done a lot better was leverage the relationships I had. I was always a little too passive. And it goes back to social media now, right? Call to action. A lot of people are afraid to say, hey, I'm selling you something. And it's same thing as what I wish I would have done there, was like, just be honest and just build that relationship and say, hey, you know, I'm trying to open up something. You want to be an investor? Or, hey, can you get me this? I was always afraid to ask. And I think that's where J-Rock was so good at, is he was able to develop those relationships. And he just kept growing it organically. And he would be everywhere. I became more of a homebody as I got older. And if I can go back in time, that's what I would change.
Wow, that's valuable knowledge.
Yeah, just
right
I
there.
didn't take advantage of the industry we're in, man. The people we were meeting was insane.
Yeah.
And I kind of lost touch with them over time. I regret that. That's the one thing I regret.
Wow. Yeah. So now going to Florida, I saw that you have an Airbnb, which when I saw that you got that, I was like, wow, that's huge, because I've had an Airbnb here in Vegas for 5 years now. Like, I got early on, right when it came out. I was just kind of lucky, to be honest. I had an open room in this house, and my friend was like, yo, why don't you put it on Airbnb? I was like, what's Airbnb? The first day I put it up, it booked out for EDC, and I was like, oh, I got another room, I'm gonna put that on there. And that booked, and it just never stopped booking, and it like spiraled. And now I'm like 5 years as a super host. I mean, I've made tremendous money from that. And not only that, because I had, you know, Robert Kiyosaki teaches this in Rich Dad Poor Dad, which I know we spoke about this book previously. You know, when you build income or passive income that outweighs your expenses, you know, now you've made it out the rat race, and it allows you to work with more passion and purpose and not be so desperate to put in hours just to have a check. Right. And so that really is what allowed me to kind of tell nightlife bye and, you know, focus on building my health business.
And you've done amazing, by the way.
So
it's incredible. Watch.
Yeah. So I'm real big on Airbnb, and actually that's kind of how I was so intrigued with Pineda Media and what they do. You know, Ryan Pineda just being like the real estate mogul that he is, right? And you know, moving forward, I know, you know, I want to put my time and attention into a couple things, and one of those is building business, building big business, and also learning to become a good investor. Because if you can do those two things, or even really the third way nowadays to really build wealth is to be an influencer as well. And if you can hit all three of those, if you can be a good business builder, a good investor, and an influencer, it's the triple threat. You know?
It's funny you bring up Airbnb. You're the first person to actually introduce me to Turo at the time. Remember Turo? You used Turo, right?
Yeah.
I've heard you. So I mean, it's funny. It's so popular now, but you told me this like 3 years.
I have 2 vehicles on Turo. I had my RV on RV Share Outdoorsy for 5 years too. I actually bought this RV. I made all my money back on it and some, and then just sold it.
Yeah.
So
it's crazy. I mean, amazing how you can make money now. There's really no reason to be broke. I mean, there's so many ways to make money. But yeah, I mean, listen, man, you know, obviously the Airbnbs prompted me to Florida, but you know, I got into the health journey. I opened up my own business, as you know. But shout out to Ryan Pineda, who's amazing at what he does. But I'll tell you right now, another regret. I don't know if you should have regrets, but screw it. I almost said the F word. I don't know if I can.
Lessons and blessings, man.
Lessons
no
and
mistakes. You know what I mean?
You know, if I could do it over
growing.
again, as much as I loved that cafe and I was able to open up 2 locations and I did well with it, if I can go back in time, I would have went all in on real estate, man, knowing what I know.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Look at me and
Yeah.
you are on the same page here. Let me tell you. So remember, I had my spa for a little bit. I opened up a spa in Henderson.
I remember.
And it was 2015. And at the time, I was actually looking at a condo in the Platinum, which is right there off Flamingo and Koval. And I was looking at another property. And at the time, it was like $100K for this property in Platinum and another property. And so 20% down on both of those, I would have already doubled the value of those and had those paid off and had this passive income going. But in my head, I said, you know, I've always had these businesses, service-based businesses, different businesses, but I've never had a brick and mortar, you know? And I was like, I want a brick and mortar. And it was more in the health spa side of things. So I was like, this is it. And I saw the vision. I went in, I re-imaged it. I added new equipment. And, you know, after running that thing for a couple of years, dude, I felt like a slave to that business. Like it was literally like I just bought myself a job, right? And I had a spa director in place. It ran on its own to an extent, but just between like members and equipment breaking down, I was like, oh, I want to do nothing but go back to nightlife because I can just wear a suit and show up and have fun. But if I would have just put that, I think I invested a total of like 60, almost 70 grand into real estate instead of that store, my life would be different right now.
Yeah, I know.
But hey, shoulda, woulda, coulda.
Shoulda, woulda, coulda. And it's a lesson experience. But, you know, there's 2 things. There's 2 pains in life, right? So there's regret and discipline. Discipline weighs ounces, but regret weighs a ton. And the one thing I didn't want to have was regret. And I'm sure you felt the same way.
Yeah.
I always wanted to have a brick and mortar. I always wanted to do a hospitality concept. So I'm glad I did it. Yeah, would I change it if I could do it all over in hindsight? Yes, but I'm glad I went through that process because I would have had so much regret not doing that. And I'm sure you would have too.
100%. And actually, one of the biggest lessons, I tell people this story all the time, one of the biggest takeaways from investing in that spa and doing what I did with that is I knew when I left there, I said, anything I put my time and energy into moving forward business-wise, I need to be online. Like I maybe it's an Aquarius thing, but me personally, I value mobility and freedom and just not being confined. So when I had already started, as soon as I shut down the spa and decided to move on from that, I had already started having my wheels turning as far as what can I build online. At that point in time, I didn't have, you know, online fitness in mind. Like it just wasn't a thing, but I already was thinking like, what can I build online? You know, so I do have to give it up to, you know, that experience. And also too, you know, I had that spa open for almost 3 years. The experience and the knowledge that I learned from having that spa for 3 years was, you know, equally as valuable as the, you know, several years I spent in UNLV.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it was real life, real world experience. Like that stuff you can't learn in the classroom. So
it's so true, man. I mean, like I said, I wouldn't regret it. You know, I lost, when you collaborate all the time and effort, I ended up losing money. Luckily, somebody wanted to buy both locations. So I took advantage of that opportunity, sold them, and moved on. And obviously that's why I'm moving to Florida.
Did you break even, or you lost a little, or you came out a little on top because you sold it?
When you look at the time I put in, you put everything in to get in there, I lost money.
Yeah.
I mean, luckily financially I made a little bit, but when you add everything, I lost money.
Sure.
But you know, it was a process. It was a marathon. The restaurant business is a marathon. It's not like real estate where you can flip houses and start making, you know, thousands of dollars overnight. No, it's a marathon. I was on a 10-year plan. Things changed, and I had to call an audible. And I'll never forget, I was at Thanksgiving with my wife's family, and they were bothering me, my staff, and I couldn't even enjoy Thanksgiving. I was like, you know what? I looked at her and I said, I think I want to sell this, man. I'm getting sick and tired of it. Guess what happened? The next day, somebody slid into my DMs and said, hey, are you interested in selling your cafes? So it's like manifestation, right?
Oh,
you put things out in the
absolutely.
universe, it comes back.
Yeah.
Obviously, it was Instagram. I said, here's my number. Call me if you're serious. He did. It was a husband and wife from Denver. They loved what I built from a brand standpoint. They loved the cafe, and the rest is history.
That's amazing.
That's how I literally put it out there.
You know, and that's the way the cookies crumble, right?
Yeah.
That's the way the cards were dealt. Sometimes we just gotta roll with the punches, man. I'm a big believer in that.
Yeah.
I mean, even in the space I'm in now, if you would have asked me 5 years ago if I'd be doing what I'm doing, you know, helping people with their health online, I would say you're out of your mind. You're crazy. I was still working in the nightlife industry, you know. It just didn't even align. So it's just wild the way things work, you know.
Absolutely.
But me and my mom have always said this, you know, everything happens for a reason.
As cliche as it is, it's true.
Yeah. You know,
it really is true.
I know, you know, you've heard that before. A lot of people have, but in my life and my own experiences, man. And sometimes, you know, it actually talks about this in a couple different really popular personal development books. Sometimes the things that happen to us, we think they're the worst at the time, right? Like, oh man, I didn't get the promotion I wanted, or, you know, I got let go from this company that I've been with forever, you know, and it's like, this is the worst thing that could ever happen. And then you look back a couple years later and you're like, if that didn't happen, this and this wouldn't happen. That was potentially one of the best things that could have ever happened to me. So I think it's really about being optimistic, being positive, having hope, having faith, and then just realizing that, you know, the best is yet to come, right? Like we want to see the silver lining in every situation. As easy as that sounds, you know, for a lot of people, it's not. Like I've literally had people tell me sometimes, like, you're just too positive, and it's like, what? Like, how can you be too positive? You know, like, like no, that's
positive.
That's
be negative, everyone.
Right? Manifestation, putting it out there, just like you said. Like we have to, you have to keep believing, you have to keep achieving. You know, you have to keep going, you have to keep growing.
You know, hey man, when one door closes, another one opens. I mean, look, you know, I came here in pursuit of music, but I had a vision, I had a goal that I wanted to be successful. And then look, one door closed, didn't happen, and then I ended up getting into the hospitality, which changed my life forever. So yeah, as long as you're positive, got to be positive.
So with the Airbnb in Florida, how did you end up acquiring that and setting that up?
So me and my brother have quite a few multi-units in Pennsylvania that we've been. So I started investing in real estate in 2015. And we did really well.
Good time to start investing.
Yeah, it was good. I wish I would, again, I would have been more aggressive.
All in on real estate, right.
So we did really well. We had long-term rental, tenants, and things were going well. So, you know, we ended up selling one, did a 1031 exchange, ended up buying a property in Florida. And then we ended up doing a line of credit on one of our other properties, bought another property. Long story short, I have 3 properties now in Florida. And then I'm looking to get another one in the Poconos in Pennsylvania. And I love the short-term rentals just because of my background in hospitality.
Yeah.
He's more of a long-term rental guy, but the cash flow and short-term rental can be pretty amazing if you obviously do your due diligence and you run your numbers. And he convinced me to actually look at Florida, and it's the St. Pete Beach area. So from Clearwater down to St. Pete Beach, a lot of little beach towns there, very short-term friendly, and especially Seminole and Largo. And I looked at places where there's no major hotels. So I don't think anything could potentially happen. You just never know.
Right.
But obviously, when we ran our numbers, we wanted to make sure that if they do pull the plug on the short-term rental, that we can transition into long-term rental. So therefore, we don't put ourselves in a bad
That's
spot.
actually what happened to me this year.
Yeah.
I was on track. Last year, I had my biggest year ever as a short-term host. And I was on track to just crush it this year. Not only is my fitness business doing, you know, record-breaking numbers, but then my Airbnb too. And I'm just like, oh my God, like I'm about to hit crazy numbers that I never imagined I'd be able to hit. You know,
Did you get affected by the laws and all that?
Yeah. So what happened was, you know, they're really cracking down on short-term rentals here in Las Vegas right now. Yeah. And one of my neighbors probably had got a little irritated with parking, or you know, a guest like parked in front of one of her trash cans one time. And so I'm not sure who did it or what, but somebody reported me to this website like clickcfix.com or something like that. And it's funny because my friend, Coden's friend, my son's friend, his dad works for the city and was like, hey, I saw this email come through, and I checked and it's your address. So I knew like the day after I got reported, and I was like, okay, we'll see. I'm expecting something. So shortly after that, a few weeks, I got a letter saying, hey, you need to shut down your short term. So all I had to do was transition. Now I have to go 31 days plus. But it literally took me down probably over 3,000 plus passive income monthly. Not only that, now I have people in my house long term because I live in my house that I Airbnb. Yeah. It's big enough to do so. And so it's different. I mean, I have great guests and I love it, and the house is big and the vibe's good. But then it's just like, before people would come and go, and then they're really happy because they're there having fun. Maybe they're there for a concert, whatever. They're out and they're like, thank you for the hospitality and hi, bye. And then next, and now it's like, oh shoot, I'm seeing you every day for a month, 2 months.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, man, what happened in Las Vegas. I mean, obviously we know that the hotels are the ones that were really fighting it, as well as some of the neighbors. I get it. They don't want to live next to short-term rentals. Now I have a friend here. She had 6 of them. And she told me some horror stories because, people coming for bachelor parties, bachelorette parties. Yeah. The mentality's different. Where I'm at, it's very family friendly.
Oh, for sure.
So, like, nobody's throwing parties 11, 12. She was telling me there was one time, like, a husband and wife or a boyfriend and girlfriend were literally on the front of her yard, 4 a.m., just yelling, screaming, fighting at each other. Like, nobody wants to deal with that, right? It's just crazy, the story she's told me, but it is unfortunate. I mean, look what happened in Dallas, Texas, I think a month ago. I mean, they completely shut it down. Everyone. Yeah. Yeah, like that's unfortunate. I mean, that's...
Oh, Airbnb?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even see that.
I think a lot of the big cities, I would want to stay... If I had to take... My intuition would say stay away from the big cities just because... You're dealing with major hotels that are there.
It's a political thing. Political thing, it's corporations and lots of money and lots of. There's a big case here. So what happened here in Vegas is the city tried to come out and say short terms are illegal. Yeah. However, federally, that's illegal for the city to do that because there's no process where people can apply for an application to have a license. Yeah. So they were saying that, it's illegal because you don't have a license. Well, there's no way to get a license. So there's a huge case going on. So now they've made a way where you can apply for a license, but it's like on a lottery-based status and you have to get your HOA signed off. Well, most newer places in Vegas have HOAs, and in the HOA contract, you can't have anything less than 6 months in most of those. So HOAs don't sign off. You can't even apply. So they're making it real hard and tough. It's, but hey, there's a way to apply for a license now. So short terms are illegal, and the fines are insane. You can get fined up to $10,000 per night, I believe. It's $1,000 per night, up to $10,000. Yeah. But I've seen some court cases, like I follow it, where they're hitting people with $150,000 liens. But these are people who they've gotten notices. They told them to stop. They've checked on them, and they keep doing it.
Yeah, of course.
So as soon as I got my letter, I just shut it down. I switched to long term, and I was like, I'm not risking the huge fines.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. It's interesting. I mean, it is what it is. You just got to keep going. You got to keep trucking. You got to keep taking chances. Obviously, the older you get, you be a little more calculated in in the chances you take. But I love Florida. Me and my wife would go visit. I was like, we got to move here.
Yeah. So, for me, like now that I've kind of had this taste of this passive income, and it really has allowed me to live a different life, right? Because, you would agree, I'm sure, the end goal is not just more money. It's having the financial stability to take care of your family and control and own your time, right? And what that has allowed me to do was wake up and put my health first every day. And because of that, it's allowed me to really set forth on building something that I'm passionate about, right? So now I'm like, because I had that taste of that passive income and it's got stripped from me in a sense, you know what I mean? It's like, that's all I want to build moving forward. Mm-hmm. Yes, business, like I want to continue to help people and make an income while making an impact. Like I'm true to that, in my heart, but also, what's the other direction? And they say, 90% of millionaires are made from real estate, right?
Yeah.
So
I believe it.
That has to be the direction, whether it's, but they also say, I know a lot of people are like, yeah, I want to get rentals. what they teach at Pineda, right, is learn how to wholesale, learn how to flip, because then if you get good deals, if you get good at finding deals, and you can, you know, get these houses at a discount, or you get these houses at a discount and you flip them, at that point, if it makes sense to rent it out and draw some of that money back while you're waiting to sell it or whatever, that's how you kind of stack up your rental portfolio.
Of course.
So
yeah, it's always something. I mean, it's funny. Just yesterday, we had a guest who's staying there. He's checking out. Him and his family's checking out. They checked out today. They had a great stay, wonderful time at one of our Airbnbs, and he sent me a picture yesterday, and there was a snake in their luggage.
wait, from
so it's Florida. Mind you, this is Florida.
Florida,
okay,
yeah.
the tropical weather. It's a different type of things happening down there. Those insects and animals, they like the weather just like we do.
What part of Florida is it?
This is like the Gulf, so St. Pete Beach. So you're looking at this particular home was in Largo, which is actually right next to Clearwater.
So where is that? Like, I'm not looking at a map right now, but I'm very familiar. Like, I've been to Miami like umpteen times, like South Beach, and
yeah. So let's see. So Miami's here, and then you're looking about right here. There's Florida, and then up here is the Panhandle, which is where Destin is.
Okay.
So it's like that part here in the Gulf, right?
Ah,
it's like a little bit
more
in the
closer,
middle.
like towards Louisiana. And,
Yeah.
New Orleans.
So we're an hour and 10 minutes from Orlando, 3.5, 4 hour drive to Miami. That's kind of the proximity.
Okay.
But, you know, he was super nice about it. And he was like, I'm not sure. He's like, no, I'm not. And he basically
There's nothing
owned
you can do
Nothing
about
you can do.
that.
But here's what he said, and this is what we know he did. And I changed it now in our description. If you got to shut the doors. I mean, there's going to be geckos, there's going to be snakes. Like, you have to shut your door. And what they do is when they go to the pool, they leave those doors, those French doors open. And it doesn't take much. But imagine them on vacation. Whoever found that snake in your luggage.
Oh, man.
I would have freaked out. It was just a little gardener snake, but it was pretty big. But, man, I would have freaked out.
So what made you choose Clearwater? Like, what?
So my brother did his research. It was actually him. I give him credit. He did his research, and he was trying to find where is the most friendly areas for short-term rentals. We went on AirDNA, did our research to see kind of what the comparables were. We looked at the housing market. And that whole area is really, really popular. Really, really popular. Now, if you go into Tampa Bay and St. Pete, it's very similar to Vegas, a lot of restrictions. But when you start getting into these other towns that are within driving distance where they have no hotels, that's like their tourism, right? Like they rely on that. And that's why we picked it. And I mean, geez, the appreciation right now in Florida, really, it's like almost 6%.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. It's
That's
insane.
awesome. So,
Yeah.
and then I see that you're working for your venue. You got your lending license.
Yeah.
Man, I follow you. I'm like
Yeah.
watching all these things you're doing. I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, this is awesome.
Talk
Tell
about
me-
pivoting, right? So
Yeah.
I got into technology. I wanted to get into technology, and what better place than to do it with your venue, which is kind of my background. They're a hospitality technology platform. So for me, it was a nice in to stay out of nightlife, but get those connections back. So now it's funny. I'm dealing with all the operators again, talking to them on a day-to-day, meeting the new people. And one thing about hospitality and nightlife and hotels, the connections are vast. I mean, those people are always connected to somebody. So I wanted that
Absolutely.
again without
Yeah.
being involved. And your venue gave me the opportunity to start an East Coast branch, which is why I'm moving to Florida, which that's how that all prompted. And then the lending side, I said, why not? Why not just get a lending license? I love the financial side of it. And why not help people get loans, more of like a little side hustle, and then going all in on real estate. And that's it.
It's funny because,
That's it.
I watch you and I follow you, and my girlfriend's a real estate agent, and we have some deals that we've been looking at and some moves we're making. And we talked about that, and I was like, wow, what if I have a financing degree. I'm good with numbers. I was like, what if I just go get my lending license? Then I was like, my hands are so tied with, I have my fitness business. I'm building another online coaching business where I'm helping people create online businesses. I'm like, there's only so many hours in a day. Like, where do I want to put my focus,
Eventually you can.
As much as I wanted to, I really was intrigued by the lending route. I was like, again, I have to go back to that lesson I learned when I had my spa, which was, I want to be able to be mobile and, and as a lender, I guess you can in a sense, but they do have, offices and home bases and, I'm just, I want to be able to work from my computer in Hawaii, man.
Yeah. First of all, I think you've made the right decision. You're doing well. Keep the momentum going. Yeah. I think having your hand in too many things can be counterproductive. But maybe when the time's right, eventually you could get your lending license. Yeah. But I think right now that's the right move because it is a little bit of work. For me, it was more of just a side hustle, and I really wanted to help people because, man, I've had some bad lending experiences. And they're really supposed to be a financial advisor at the end of the day. They're supposed to give you the best path to success. And I've told people, I've had 2 people that wanted to get a house after looking at their financials and going through. I actually advised them not to do it right now. Said, I'll do it if you want, but with your debt to income ratio and what you're making and what you're looking to buy, this is not the right time.
Yeah.
I don't need that commission. I don't want that. I really want to help. I believe that the money will come if you do right by people.
Absolutely.
And that's really what I love about
I really admire you for that because I've always known you to be this very, upfront and ethical person. And I've always valued that and admired that about you. And, to be able to not say, oh, it's just a numbers game. I need to, get these loans so I can get this commission and say, hey, this is not, in the best interest. Yeah. That's huge.
Yeah, I agree. I mean,
a lot of people just tell people what they want to hear, right? Or what they, what benefits them. But to be, straight up with somebody, it's.
Yeah. I'm not going to I've always wanted to do things where I was helping people. That's why I opened a cafe. We all have our health testimonials. I opened that because I was having health issues. And you want to be able to give back to people. We need better food. We need better options. Everything needs to be better.
And, man, congratulations on baby number 2. I saw that, and I was like, oh, whoa.
Back to back, baby. Back to back championships.
Yeah.
So you literally 16 months apart.
So 2 boys? Or
2 boys.
2 boys, man. That's awesome.
Yeah. Best thing in the world.
Yeah.
It really is. I don't know how to describe it. If you don't have kids, I get it. You don't understand because I didn't. But when you have kids, it changes your whole perspective, and then I get really annoyed, actually. This actually came up in the office. I get annoyed because, I'll hear some of the people in the office where I work, and I'm like, they'll always make excuses like, I don't want to have kids because I want to travel more. I don't want to have kids because, I want to, do me. And that irritates me.
Yeah.
Because first of all, you can still travel with your kids. And don't put your selfishness and don't blame it on the kid. Just say you don't want to have kids. Right. Or say you're just not ready. Just keep it like that. Don't blame everything else. It just annoys me because it's the most beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And Elon Musk just said that, right? He's like, we were programmed for this. It gives us happiness for a reason.
Oh, 100%. Well, you're speaking to.
That was my rant for the
No,
day.
that's good because you're speaking to a guy that's raised his son since he came out the womb, right? I raised my son in the midst of my 20s and working in nightlife, right? So my son's
have a question for you on
just
that.
a different breed, and he's an amazing, great kid. Go ahead.
I got a question because I feel like this is interesting because I want to hear your perspective. Yeah. So I had my kid, by the way, my first child when I was 40. You had yours when how old were you?
21.
21. So he's now grown, right? He's
about to be 17 here in a month.
17. Now, we all know there's stages when you have children, obviously the baby stage, the toddler stage, and so on and so forth. And each stage is beautiful and has its challenges.
Sure.
As me being a 40-year-old, obviously when you get a little older, you slow down a little bit. Would you say would you say it's harder? Are you glad you had your son at 20, or would you have rather had your son older when you're more established? Because me, I still have so much more to do, but when you're 20, that had to be scary, right? What the heck? It's like I'm about to be a dad. Yeah. So what you understand what I'm saying? Where what would you say the right answer? Is there a right answer, and what would you prefer?
So I actually read an article on this that changed my life, man. It was like they did a subject test, right? They took 1,000 subjects and they asked people between the age, I think 50 and 60, or maybe it was 60 years old, if you can go back to your 30s, what would you do differently? And they literally got so many great replies, and they took all these replies and they compiled the best top 10 answers. And, one of them was, start saving for retirement sooner than later. One of them was get on top of your health now, don't wait. Right. And then it talked about having kids. And, there really is no right or wrong time. And, to be honest, my opinion is this: kids either make you better or bitter, man. And I think it depends on a lot has to do with how we were raised and how we were brought up and the experience we had. I was young, but I wanted my kid. Like I was like, I want a son. I knew I was going to have a son. I told, my son's mom that we were going to have a son before we even had it. And I knew his name and everything. Like it was crazy. I knew it. And I love the fact that I had my son at such a young age, because now I'm a young dad. His friends look up to me. I have talks with them. I get to be a true coach and mentor to my son and his friends. We have a really close relationship. Also now that he's 17, I'm 38. I feel like I still have like my second wind in life, man. Mm-hmm. Like, me and my girl, I love this girl to death. I want to have a kid with her, but we both talked about this early on. We're, like, neither of us want that right now.
Yeah.
Right. So I know for me, I want to have a kid. Again, another one in my early to mid 40s, probably about mid 40s. So another seven years or so. If it came sooner, awesome. But to go off what you said, I think having my son has been one of the greatest things that's ever happened to me in my life. He's always been my why, my driving factor, and the reason behind my, hey, keep going when, I feel like quitting. He's the reason, one of the big reasons behind why I decided to take control of my health when I did. And the relationship I have with him and the love I have with him, I mean, it's literally, it's second to none. There's nothing like it. So I'm glad I had my son at the age I did. Am I ready for another kid right now? No, because I've spent the last 8 years dialing in on my health and my fitness, which I have really great control of that. So now I want to put all my focus, time, and energy to achieving financial freedom and levels that nobody in my family has achieved. And I have the potential to do that more than anybody else in my family. I'm already on the path to do that. So for me, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. I'm focused. I have a woman in my life who's very focused on that same thing. She came from Colombia, years ago, didn't even understand English. She's worked her way up from, busser jobs to server jobs to having her real estate license. Like, we're both very driven and motivated. And I want to find that one, which I feel like I found that, and build that empire, and build that legacy. And then when we're financially stable and secure, which we are already in a sense, but like when we've really like hit that level, like, okay, now we're in a position to bring, a child into this world. And really that kid right there is going to have a completely different father than my son Coden has had. Right. Which it's not that one's better than the other. It's just a whole different mindset, a whole different level, a whole different person. So we talk about that. We joke about that with my son. But yeah, man, wow. My son, I can't tell you how proud of him I am. I mean, he's 100 times better than I ever was. I was a little problem child growing up, man. It's just not having a dad around, and my mom did her best. I love my mom to death, but there was no controlling me, man. I was gone. I was out there doing whatever and whenever, but it taught me a lot.
How you start, though, it's how you finish. Yeah. So you're on that path to finishing.
And it's funny you say that, because I know every time I'm with you, I talk about Robert Kiyosaki a lot, dude. His books have changed my life. I mean, legitimately. And he talks about the 4 quarters of our money game, right? And so, 25 to 35 is quarter 1. 35 to 45 is quarter 2. 45 to 55 is quarter 3. And then 55 to 65 is quarter 4, right? So, when you look at where you're at right now with your life and the regrets or the mistakes that you've made, dude, you haven't even hit halftime.
I know. I like that, by the way.
And
like that.
Most games are won in the second half, baby. It's not how you start. It's how you finish,
no,
right?
It's absolutely true.
Just what you said.
I love it. It's absolutely true, man. No, that was a great answer. And, I always think about that. Like, what would it be like if it was earlier or later? I think, for me, later definitely worked out much better. But I also look at people like you. It's like you're a little bit younger than me, but now it's like you're in the prime, because I feel like I'm in the prime of my life, right? So I think the hardest thing about having kids at this age is there's no consistency with my routine. I used to love my routine. Now I just got to get it in when I can. Like I used to wake up 5 in the morning. Can't do that anymore. Right. Sometimes I have to go to the gym at 8 p.m. versus in the morning. That's been the biggest challenge because you just have to always call audibles. But yeah, you know, it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, having that structure and routine is so important. Actually, I'm trying to, you know, get my son to implement that because as a 17-year-old, you know, that's the coaching and guidance and mentorship he needs, you know, from the male figure in his life. Yeah. But yeah, you know, in the article I was telling you about, you know, there's pros and cons to both sides, right? Because when you have your kids younger, then, you know, you're a little bit more closer to them in a sense that you're not that much older than them. You can still relate and connect with them, especially in this world of social media and how things are evolving and changing so quick. You know, and if you have them older, you know, maybe you're not technically promised as much or guaranteed as much time with them, but they get a more stable, financially stable, emotionally stable, and secure upbringing, which, you know, can make or break them as an individual, right? So there's pros and cons to both sides, man. I don't think there's any wrong or right time. You know, if it's something you want to do, I personally think it's more about finding the right person, you know, because that's probably the mistake I made when I was younger. I love my son's mom to death. She's my son's mom. I don't have anything bad to say about her, but we were young and, you know, I didn't even know what I wanted. I mean, even till most recent years, I still was figuring out exactly what I wanted and valued in a relationship. But I think that's because I had to figure out me. Like, you know, putting my health and wellness first and really taking responsibility for myself and my actions and, you know, manning up and owning up to everything I was doing. Like, there comes a point in your life where you can't blame your parents. You can't blame anything else. Like, dude, this is you. You know what I mean? So once I started really owning up to that and taking control of my health and, you know, my finances and everything in my life just spiraled. And then I was like, oh, this is what I want in a relationship. I demand that. These are my boundaries. You know, if it's anything less than this, I'm not settling for that, because I became the person, you know, that I needed to be in order to have the person that I demand to have, in a sense. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely, it does. It does. You got to find your own path. Everybody's path is unique, and you know when it's time. You know when you're ready. You know when things are changing for the better. And you just got to keep pushing forward. Also, too, you know, being very clear and having our intentions about, like, you know, what we want out of our relationship, out of, you know, being a parent, out of life in general. Having those intentions are so important, and being very clear with them. I'll never forget, I learned this in a communication class that I took in college, and it was like, you know, everyone has their own perspective on happiness and success. Yeah. But until you know exactly what your version of happiness and success is, only then can you start achieving it. So, you know, I worked with this mental health coach. She's like a life performance coach. A couple years ago, I was coming out of a 4-year relationship. Again, I love this girl to death. We're still really good friends. We have so much love and respect for each other. We grew so much as individuals, but we just decided, you know, it was time to go our separate ways. But coming out of that, I was like, you know, what do I really want? And this coach, she was like, what do you want? Like, have you ever sat there and wrote down your dream relationship? And I was like, no. And she's like, okay, homework assignment, right? I want you to sit down and write down, you know, is your relationship monogamous? Is it not? Is there religion involved? Is there kids involved? What kind of house are you going to have? What kind of careers are you going to have? Like, where are you going to live? Like, I want you to put all this together, right? And I was like, wow, like, this is a lot, you know? It wasn't just a quick, okay. I sat on that for weeks, man. I put time and effort into thinking about all these things, and I just went at it, and I started writing. I walked away from it. I went back to it. I walked away from it. I went back to it, and I said, here's the finished product. Yeah. And I literally wrote down exactly what I want and what I'm looking for in life and in a relationship. And 2 years go by. I was dating. I put myself out there in the dating scene, which I had never really done because I was always in long-term relationships. You know, I'd never been on dating apps, and that's like the thing these days, because, you know, you can just get dates left and right if you're a decent looking guy that's in shape, right, you know. And so I spent a couple years, man, traveling and dating different women. Yeah. And
when I found this girl that I'm dating right now, I knew right away. I was like, she's it. And she was like kind of skeptical, like, how do you know? Like, we just met. Like, do you tell every girl that? And I'm like, I want to share something with you, you know? And I busted out my dream relationship paper and I read it to her, and she was like, jaw drop, because you're never going to find someone that's 100% on that, what you wrote. But if you can find someone that's like 80 or even 90%, like, what else are you looking for? Like, this is exactly what you're looking for. Like, it's not all rainbows and sunshine, you know what I mean? And it's crazy because she busted out a dream relationship that she had wrote a year earlier. It was all in Spanish, and she read it to me. And I was more than 80% that. She was more than 80% mine. I was like, this is
the
wild.
fact that you guys both did that,
it
just shows you what you guys were both seeking. Again, manifestation, putting things out there into the universe, telling what you want ends up coming back.
And it's just being very intentional,
mindset.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm a big believer that, you know, we need to do that with our health, with our business, with our family. Actually, part of my Health is Wealth program, right? The first thing I do once people enroll and sign and pay, the first thing I have them do is sit down and journal 5 minutes about the progress that they hope to see going through my program. And I say, do not move on until you do this. And I check to make sure they do it. Because, you know, if they're at some point in the program, if they're getting off track or they don't remember why they started, I say, hey, you have that picture that, you know, I make them take a picture of it, pull that up. Right. And they're like, it's just being very clear on what we want, where we want to go.
It's like, man, if you're going to pay for a course and pay to give somebody your time, you know, you're going to want to have that accountability, right? Like you would think, I'm sure it's easier said than done for some people, but it's like, don't move on until you write what your goals are, what you see yourself, whatever you have them do. They should take that serious.
Yeah. My accountability system is second to none, man. I've perfected this to the T because I know how important the accountability is. And some people need different forms of accountability, right?
Yeah.
Some people need like a daily check-in. Some people need a weekly check-in. Some people just need to be reminded why they started. Some people need the data laid out in front of them and say, hey, here's exactly where you started. Here's exactly where you are. Do you see that progress? And they're like, oh, I am progressing. Yeah. You know, so it's just, it's different for everybody. But I tell people like this, I'm like a professor. You know what I mean? And I have students. I don't like to call my people clients. I like to call them students because I'm all about education, sustainability, and accountability. Yeah. You know, I want to educate and empower people to where they don't need me forever. Yeah. They don't need to keep going hiring coach after coach. Yeah. You know, and it's kind of like building a house, right? Like, we need to learn how to build it and not just the pieces. We need that foundation, you know, and once we have that foundation, we can really build off that and create the healthy future that we desire.
Yeah. I think it's great, man. I think you're doing great stuff. I mean, you're helping people, and on the same time, you're getting rewarded for it. It's a win-win. I think it's beautiful. I can't believe this is the path you've taken. Yeah. So interesting. But, you know, I'm not surprised because it's you in particular have always been such a individual that I feel like when you're focused on something, you succeed. Like you were super successful at the Palms within the promotions department. Anywhere you went, you've always found a way.
It's crazy that you say that, man, truth, because
that's who you are.
You just gave me the chills right now, and here's why. Yeah. I told my son the exact same thing yesterday. Sunday. I was with him and his friend. His friend wanted to go get some speakers. I went with him, and I was like, Coden, you know, something about you, man, like, ever since you were a kid, you just got it. Like, whatever you put your all into, I don't care if it's football, karate, jiu-jitsu, you know, gaming, whatever. Like, dude, you excel. And
it's a special
I didn't
person.
even realize, you know what I mean? What you just told me, like, made it click right now. I was like, wow.
Like, you will always, like, if you stick with this for the rest of your life, great. If you go on to the next thing or the next thing, you're always going to be successful because there's specific people out there that have a mindset that you can teach, but you also have to have that within you. And I think no matter what you do, you're always going to be successful. And I'm sure your son sees that. He probably doesn't realize what he's seeing yet, but it probably is coming second nature. Yeah. I just think there's certain people out there that, you know, no matter what they get involved in, there's going to come good out of it. even through the trials and tribulations, even when you fail at certain things.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
do you think that goes back to the conversation we were having earlier about like seeing the silver lining in every situation?
Absolutely. I definitely,
so that we can agree that like having an optimistic mindset and seeing the silver lining in every situation, good or bad, is probably like a secret in life.
It is. I think I definitely think it is. You're absolutely right. Even if you have, like, I think the word regret, it has people take that word a little too literally sometimes. Like, when I say regret, this is in a hindsight mentality. Like, if you say, hey, go back in time, open up the cafe again, not knowing what you know, I'm going to do it 100 times out of 100. Now, if knowing what I know in hindsight, if you tell me to go back, I would change a lot of things. It's easy to say that. So, like, I think, the silver lining, I think it's so important to understand the silver lining in everything, because everything has a silver lining.
Yeah.
Everything, good or bad.
So let me ask you this, man. Like, what is the future of Pasquale Romano, the family man with the wife and 2 kiddos look like?
Okay, let me think. What's it look like real quick here? I'll keep it as short and sweet as I can. So again, we're going to go back to the word wealth. I think wealth means something different to everybody. Do I want to be like Grant Cardone? No. Do I listen and look for him for inspiration? Yes. So for me, what I want is financial freedom, and that means something different to everybody.
Sure.
I don't need a private jet. I'm over that material things. I just want my family and my boys and my girl to be taken care of. I want us to be able to enjoy family things together. I don't want us to be able to, be nervous or stress out about money. But on the flip side, I don't need it all either.
Right.
So I just want a happy, simple life and kind of live in the shadows a little bit.
Respect,
I don't, and that's where I struggle actually with social media. I have my newsletter. I put my podcast on hold until I move. I'm figuring out what content I want to do, how to use TikTok, how to use Instagram. I struggle with that a little bit because I know how valuable it is. And it's so important where you can give value to people. But on the flip side, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, man. Yeah. It's a lot of work. So like sometimes I struggle with it. So the first thing I do when I get to Florida is I'm going to map out what I want to do with my personal brand and which direction I want to go. But yeah, that's kind of what it looks like, man. Simplicity at its finest.
Can I tell you what I see you, kind of what direction I see you?
Yeah, let's go. I want, because this could
man,
inspire
you're for someone like me, I've always admired you and looked up to you, and I feel like you've kind of always been like a step ahead of me in a sense. Like when it came to nightlife, you were a VIP host when I was a promoter, right? I moved to a VIP host, you were a director, like, so I've always admired that. But man, at heart, you're a consultant, man, and you're a motivator, and you inspire, and you have a lot of wisdom, man. You have a lot of knowledge, and I think you can help a lot of people. So if you're able to really package that and put it together in a way that you can, take on students to educate them and mentor them, wow, man, the possibilities are endless. Gotta have faith, man. We gotta have faith. We gotta keep going. We gotta keep growing. So, yeah, man. Well, cool. Thank you so much for coming through.
This was great, by the way.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks again, brother. Pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll do this again sometime soon.
Good stuff.